Jean Greer here at Stylish Fireplaces with the 7 most common mistakes or misunderstandings when it comes to electric fireplace installation. Number 1 would be the electrical requirements and not fully understanding the requirements for an electric fireplace. Because most electric fireplaces have heaters in them, you need to wire for the heater. Even if you don't think you're going to use the heater very much, or you're not going to use it at all, or you're not going to use it every day, because there's a heater in the fireplace, you must do the electrical as if you are going to use the heater. What that means is you need a dedicated circuit. So that's not saying I have a plug just for the fireplace. It's saying that wherever I'm connecting that electric fireplace, that particular wire goes directly to the electrical panel. It goes directly to its own circuit breaker. Nothing else is connected to that circuit breaker. And therefore, if the heater were set to its highest setting, there would be enough power on that circuit to support the heater. When the heater is not on, or when it's on a low setting, of course, you will not need all the power on a single circuit. However, you have to wire it as if you're going to use the heater at full capacity all of the time. That's just a requirement for safety. That means a dedicated circuit, whether it's 120 volts or 240, which we'll talk about separately. The second thing is understanding 120 volts versus 240 volts and hardwire versus plug-in. So some electric fireplaces are what we call dual voltage. All electric fireplaces can connect to 120 volts. Some of them can also connect to 240 volts. You don't buy a separate fireplace, you buy one model, but it could be connected to either 120 or 240. If it's connected to 240, it will always be direct wired or hardwired. There isn't a plug-in like there would be on, say, an electric stove or an electric dryer. It is hardwire only for an electric fireplace on 240 volts. A 120 volt fireplace could be hardwired, but it could also be on a plug. And usually you can decide. But it isn't the fact that it's 240 or 120 that determines whether it's hardwired, because either could be hardwired, but 240 must be hardwired, just because they don't put a plug on those units the way they might on some other 240 volt appliances. The next thing would be framing, and we are boggled by the number of people who come in and say they've already framed an opening for a particular size fireplace and they're here to find one that will fit in the hole. There is not a universal size amongst most of the fireplaces that we carry. There are some overlaps where certain manufacturers have made a model that would almost fit in the same opening as another manufacturer's model. Generally speaking, though, there isn't a universal framing dimension. So picking a framing dimension out of the air and then looking for a fireplace after the fact just doesn't work. It's very challenging to find something that way, if not impossible. Likewise, when you look at the owner's manual, and you must look at the owner's manual for framing dimensions, be sure you're looking at the framing diagram. Do not look at the drawing of the fireplace dimensions and then try and figure out what the right framed opening size would be. There is a correlation. However, the framing dimensions have allowed for all the little screws that are on the side panels, maybe the position of the plug, making sure there's room for that cord in the framing dimension, etc. You must use the framing dimensions in the owner's manual to figure out how to make that opening in your wall. Anything else is rolling the dice and hoping for the best. We don't believe in wishful thinking here. Use the owner's manual, find the framing dimensions. That's what you should be making your opening. The next would be the plug position. So related to framing, if the fireplace is going to fit into a 6-inch depth, and then you put a plug or a receptacle directly behind that in your framed opening, you're going to need more than the 6 inches required in the framing dimension. The wiring is generally done off to the side, to the left or the right, above or below where the fireplace is going to be in the framed opening. Otherwise, if you are going to have a receptacle directly behind the fireplace and the fireplace needs 6, you then need to add a few more inches for the head of that plug. So think about the position of the plug. It's generally not directly behind the fireplace, and this would apply to fireplaces that sit on the floor as well. The center of the fireplace is usually where the firebox is. It's the deepest part of the whole configuration. You don't want the plug directly behind that. If it's in a cabinet, maybe the plug could be in the hollow spot to the left or the right of the firebox, and then everything will fit up against the wall. So be aware of where you're putting a plug-in receptacle. It is almost never directly behind the fireplace, whether it's going into the wall, whether it's, for sure, if it's on the wall, it cannot be directly behind the fireplace. And if it's in a cabinet, usually it won't fit behind the fireplace. The next thing that sometimes people ask us is about extension cords, again, related to electrical. It's recommended that the fireplace be on its own circuit, obviously. If it is plugged in, it should have a direct connection to the wall receptacle. Extension cords are not recommended. If you are using an extension cord, be absolutely certain it is rated for heavy duty use, that it can allow 1500 watts to flow through the cord. You can't use the kind of cord you would put on a lamp, for instance. That's very lightweight. You're going to have to look for a heavy duty extension cord that is rated for the 1500 watts or slightly more that your fireplace could need when the heater is on. How high should you mount your electric fireplace? We've done whole videos and blog posts just on the height of the fireplace, and you can check those out. Generally, you want to be looking down at your flames. In our showroom, we do mount fireplaces higher on the wall than we would ever do in a residential or commercial situation. We're just using our space efficiently to show as many products as possible. However, in our homes, in our commercial spaces, we want to be looking down into the flames on an electric fireplace. So we're thinking about, am I going to be standing in this space? Am I going to be seated? And how am I going to view the flames? Of course, if there's something going above the fireplace like a TV, we're going to start from the ideal position for the TV or the piece of art and work our way down to where the fireplace should be. And last but not least, you may find that some manufacturers will have what they call a heat chart in the owner's manual, telling you how warm the wall might be at certain places above the fireplace. And that may or may not affect what you're going to hang above. And it's just something to be aware of. Generally speaking, a linear fireplace we want up off the floor by at least 12 inches. If you're doing a more traditional installation, it could certainly sit at floor level, but there's nothing wrong with raising that up. However, a more traditional fire is almost never going to be very high up the wall at, say, more than 18 or 24 inches, and that would be extremely unusual for a traditional fireplace, but not at all unusual for a linear fireplace. Can all fireplaces be wall mounted? And what do you mean when you say wall mounted? This is a term that is sometimes a little misused. All of the fireplaces behind me can be hung on the wall. The one at the top is in the wall, but it could be on the wall. The one in the middle is on the wall and cannot go in the wall, and some people would call both of those wall mounted. The one behind me is built in, cannot be hung on the wall. There are many electric fireplaces that can go in the wall that cannot hang on the wall, and vice versa. There are some that are made to hang on the wall that cannot go in the wall. So when we say wall mounted, we need to be very clear about what we are looking for. Are we looking for something that mounts into the wall or on the wall? And does the model you're looking at do that particular installation that you're looking for? And the owner's manual is always the best place to get that information. And can an electric fireplace go outdoors? Yes, If the fireplace has been tested and rated for outdoor installation, it can go outdoors. There are electric fireplaces that are set up in such a way that they can be outdoors. There are always some rigorous stipulations for the installation outdoors, such as having an overhang above the fireplace and certain clearances to the sides, but they have been tested and rated to sit outdoors year-round. If the fireplace has not been so tested and rated and is not stated to be used in outdoor installations, do not put it in an outdoor situation. For us, we define outdoors as being obviously anything that's unprotected. So a wall, a stone wall in the middle of your backyard would certainly be outdoors. But there's some spaces that people are sort of questioning whether they need outdoors. If at any point during the year the fireplace will be exposed to the elements such as rain, dust, and pollen, and it isn't going to have glass or walls around it, so a screen porch where the screens would be up at certain times of the year and the elements can come in, any space like that, I would look for an outdoor fireplace. An indoor fireplace just can't handle that extra duress of being exposed to the elements. If it is possibly enclosed, like a gazebo or a cabana, but it isn't climate controlled year round, I would look at an outdoor fireplace, because that constant extreme temperature range from hot to cold and everything in between in our Canadian climate, fireplaces that are made for indoors aren't going to be as good at working with all of those extremes as an outdoor rated fireplace. All of these tips are in our stylish blog in more detail at stylishfireplaces.ca.